Okay, we're going live. Warriors, sages, welcome. I have a very special guest today, Sorinne Ardeleanu. I think I said that right. You'll share it well with us again.
Yes.
This is a really unique opportunity because Sorinne is an independent candidate for the President of the United States of America. And I've been following you online, and I've been really moved by the depth of energy, the centeredness, the high spirit, the consciousness that you've been holding. And my prayer for the world, for all countries, is that we have leaders like you who have deep feminine wisdom, have embodied wisdom, have understanding that goes far beyond just the political world and goes deeper into the human dynamic. So I'm really grateful for you to be here today. I'm really interested to hear all that you have to share. And I also want to know, what it takes to be in the position you're doing and the courage it takes. So welcome. Thanks for being here with all of us. All right.
Wow. Thank you for such an incredible introduction. I'm excited to share and to connect and inspire and be inspired today.
So first of all, how the heck did you end up becoming a candidate for the President of the United States of America? Like, what was your history and what this?
I hope you can hear me okay. You cut out a bit, but I did understand most of what you were saying. So let me know if I need to repeat anything. So I felt called to run for president. This isn't something that I chose. This is something that I surrendered into. I first had the idea about 20 years ago. I had grown up in a very abusive environment, and I felt that it was a miracle that I survived. And I didn't want anybody else to go through what I went through. And I felt that it was very important to find a way to make a positive impact in the world so that others wouldn't have to go through such abusive and adverse circumstances in their lives, especially as children. And so it hit me that our values are what drive our behaviors. And so I had to be in a position where I could impact values. And I realized that the President of the United States has the best platform to influence values, not only in our country, but in the world. And I didn't really take this idea too seriously at the time because I was about 20 years old at the time. And I was in my undergraduate studies. I majored in psychology, of course, because I wanted to understand human behavior, and minored in human sexuality and relationships. All these things were very fascinating to me. But I kind of went on with my life. I got into sales, recruiting, coaching. I co-owned an art gallery, co-owned a nightclub. I sold exotic cars and specialized in tax credits. I've done a lot of different things in my life so far. And I overcame my own challenges, especially because I grew up extremely poor, at least in American standards, where my mother had food stamps, Section 8, and welfare just so that she could take care of me, mostly as a single mother. And I ended up having extremely debilitating post-traumatic stress in my early to mid 30s. Because I recognized that I was repeating a pattern from childhood where I had learned that love and abuse go together, which is not true. But if you learn this as a child in your formative years, even though you may really want to have healthy relationships in your life, you're naturally going to keep attracting the same abusive relationships over and over again. And I hit bottom. And I was questioning, why am I here? Because I felt like on paper I had done it all, from going, from having nothing to having everything, going around the world, and just, it looked like I was, I had it all. And around that time, when I recognized that I was creating, this abusive, or rather recreating this abusive pattern in my life, I also recognized that I could change the pattern, that I could create a different experience. And I was introduced to a philosophy of life that really got me looking at the concepts in my subconscious mind and reclassifying them, understanding my own urges, what drives me, because we all have different things that drive us. And around that same time, I had a vision of people chanting Serene 2020. And it scared me because I have had a very colorful and diverse past, and I am far from being perfect. And I didn't really know much about politics. I didn't know that 2020 was going to be an election year. I told only one person at the time, and then I just tried to shut it down and not tell anybody else. And then I started doing kind of what you're doing, where I started interviewing inspiring spiritual people, and some of them started seeing me in this position without me telling them, and they told me. And then some of my friends started telling me this, and some of people that are in positions of power and influence started telling me this, and I hadn't told any of them this. And I was still trying to resist, because it's like, I'm not perfect, why me? I don't have experience in this. And then as the years started getting closer, I got involved in criminal justice reform work. And I had a friend that also decided to run and wanted me to run with him as his vice presidential candidate. And so just all these pieces were starting to come together. And the more I fought it, the more my body actually started to break down. And
Yes.
having overcome PTSD, I realized, the body never lies. What do I have to lose? And is there anybody else out there that has the insights that I have that cannot be bought? Because that's where I'm at in my life right now. Like, I realize that money does not make you happy, does not make you healthy, does not bring you peace. I realize that you have to work for all those things. So I'm in a place where, when I was younger, that yes, money did drive me, but now it doesn't. Now what drives me is being able to help others attain health and peace and fulfillment in their lives, and sharing my path. And again, recognizing that, like, politics really needs people like me. And so it's been inspiring to lift others up, to change the conversation. And I'm just getting started, is what I've realized, as far as politics goes. And no matter what happens this election, I'm going to keep moving forward in this direction, because I know that it takes time to really bring a vision like this into fruition, because this isn't about me. This is an evolution of consciousness. This requires a lot of work on my part, but it also requires a lot of alignment with others and influencing others to do their own work as well. And that's the short version.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you for that. To be able to listen to that calling, listen to that sound, that big bell within, regardless of how incredulous it sounds. That's why many of us who are in our positions of success or influence or impact, we're here because we follow the impossible. So some of your naysayers may say, this is impossible for you to ever get into this position. What do you have to say to those type of folks who are like, what are you doing? This sounds crazy. How are you going to be able to fight this huge system which has billions of dollars to elevate their person into a substantial position of power? How do you address that?
Sure. Well, I think about all the other people throughout history that have achieved what the masses considered impossible, right? They had big dreams and they followed them, and lots of people called them crazy and they didn't believe in them, but they stayed focused and they kept moving in that direction, and they got there. I mean, the Wright brothers, we have airplanes because of them. The telephone, the light bulb, all these technologies came from people that went against the masses. They did what people considered was impossible, but they believed, right? And they kept trying. They didn't let short-term disappointments or tripping over things, they didn't let that get in their way. They kept going forward. And so for me, I recognize I'm a very great manifester. Everything that I've ever wanted in my life, I've manifested. I've also learned to be very careful, because just because I want something doesn't mean it's right for me or that it's the right time. And so for me, part of this is having no attachment and making sure that this is as organic as possible. I don't want to throw a ton of money at this. I don't want to manipulate people. I want people to be ready and to truly want this. Because if we get a leader like me and people aren't ready, it's not going to work. People have to understand that we reap what we sow. And if people continue to make poor decisions, they need to learn from them, right? The natural consequences. Like, I think about my own journey of hitting bottom. I had to hit bottom before I could wake up and recognize I am doing this to myself. Initially, I wasn't, but when I became old enough to reason correctly, it was my responsibility to recognize cause and effect. And it's the same thing for the masses, that we all need to collectively understand that. And part of my job is to help educate people, to change the conversation. So I do believe it's possible. And I don't know when. I don't have a crystal ball. It could be this year. Anything can happen this year, as we've come to know. And it could be another year. And I guess, like I said, I am not attached. I know what my purpose is. I'm comfortable playing any part that I am meant to play in this collective evolution of consciousness through human form that we're experiencing right now.
Your groundedness in your knowingness is really powerful and profound, in your faith in that, and your openness to just trust that direction, that expansion where you're being led to. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you for recognizing.
Yeah, it's evident. It's evident. So I want to know, what do you actually believe in terms of governance? What do you actually believe in terms of our direction? I mean, before I jump into that, ask you to jump into that, we take a look at, the systems we have right now is very polarized, as you know, in America. And I don't want to talk about one party versus another party, because one party is demonizing another party, the other party is demonizing another party. There's a huge amount of demonizing going on all ends. And then there's us people who are sort of like, what do we do with all of this? I'd love to hear your share on what do you believe in, first of all, and how is that more superior or more awakened? How is it more positive for our world?
Sure. Well, I believe that there are good ideas on all sides. Right? And back to me being human and not being perfect, nobody is perfect. We're all human. And so somebody could have many good ideas, but not all good ideas. And so it's really important to consider ideas from all sides. And so, like, that's been, I think, a challenge for many people that are getting to know me politically, is that I'm kind of a nuance. I'm not on a side. I take the good from there, and then I add my own to it as well. I believe that human beings are capable of a lot more than what we have been conditioned to believe. And that, my own journey again of understanding cause and effect is that when we have a government that doesn't let us learn naturally and punishes us when we make good decisions and rewards us when we make bad decisions, it disrupts the natural evolution of our species. We're not learning, right? Life is about adaptation. It's not about being smart. It's not about being strong or beautiful or rich or famous. It is about adapting. And when the government interferes with our natural abilities to adapt, our whole species suffers, not just our country. And so I recognize that, from my perspective, I'm not into overnight change, because we have a system that has been keeping a lot of people down for a long time, and we can't just immediately change everything overnight to the ideal. We have to bridge the gap. And so in my vision, it would be, one thing at a time. There would be a lot of conversations, panels, publicly, because we need to educate people. People need to understand how life works, what they're capable of, how health works. That is a huge part of it. If we have healthy people, they're going to make better decisions. And so there's a lot that I've been considering to it, but a big part of it is really less government interference, more power to the people. Freedom, it's a liberty and freedom. They are basic principles of life. And I feel that, especially my history, we haven't really talked about it. My father defected from Romania in the 70s for religious freedom. He literally risked his life running across a border. And he said that he was lucky that the guard on the border turned the other way, because he could have been shot. So freedom is in my DNA. I understand how valuable it is to have freedom. And for him, it was the freedom to believe in God and the freedom to create music for God. That was what he risked his life for. And I can't imagine how much courage it took him to do that, because I was born in this country and I've been allowed to believe what I want and I've been allowed to create whatever I want. But I don't know what the right word is, if it's concern, but I am aware that if we take for granted these freedoms, that we might not always have them. If we delegate to the government things that we should be doing for ourselves and each other, for example, community, we should care about each other. We should understand how when you suffer, it affects me too. And when you're doing well, it affects me too. There is science behind that. And there's also, math, numbers, economics behind it. So depending on what perspective people want to take, this is a spiritual community. So I believe that in this community, that people will understand that we are all one. Everything is energy. My thought waves can be measured, and that their impact can be observed, right? So we know that now. Neuroscience shows that to us. Even classic physics shows us that. For people who aren't spiritual, that's why I mentioned economics. Some people only care about the bottom line. And so for me, I feel like I'm at an advantage that I understand both perspectives, that I can work with people on both sides, whether they actually care about humanity or whether they just care about their bottom line. I hope I answered your question a bit, and we can go further if you want as well. I mean, there's so much to this.
Absolutely. You know, what do you see right now as the biggest problems in society, and how would you address them or call us into action to address them?
Sure. I think the biggest problem is a lack of personal accountability, personal responsibility, self-discipline. Um, you know, Blaming others for our problems and not taking ownership of our own lives, giving away our power, or not even recognizing that we have any to begin with. We are all creators. We are all made in the image and likeness of God. Whatever, however you define the first cause, that is what we are. And it is a gift. And many people don't recognize that. And, because many people without discipline, without accountability, create things they don't really want. And then they wonder why. And so, as I'm talking, I feel like a lot of it is helping people understand how the human mind works, helping people understand how physics, especially just the laws governing energy, work in simple ways. We don't have to overwhelm people. You can keep it simple, and people that want to go deeper can. But these basics of life are very essential for all human beings to understand, so that we can have change, so we can stop blaming others for our problems. Another thing that's really on my mind a lot lately is money and the amount of value we put on money. And what I've recognized for the past decade, because I went in a completely different direction after I made the money, and after I was disabled for some time, I didn't want money. And I basically have spent the past 10 years of my life living very simply as far as money goes, but achieving great things. And it took me reprioritizing my values and recognizing, well, all I need is food, shelter, and love. That's it. That's all we all need. And money, it's a tool, it's helpful, yes, but it's not as necessary as people believe it is to make change. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, community is huge. We need to want to work together. You can't force morality onto people. It needs to come from within. And so we have to reason with people so they understand the benefit to them in helping others, and not throwing money at problems, like actually addressing causes of problems instead of effects as well. I know that's a lot of different things there, but like I said, this has been on my mind for a long time, and hopefully I'm doing a good job connecting the dots for you and the viewers here today.
Well, it's fascinating because those of us in the human potential or consciousness world, we recognize that the origin of all external change has to be, first of all, internal. That we're in a mirror reality, and the mirror reality reflects the transmission that we're that we're emanating. And so in the same token, to bring that into a political or a governance structure, or have that as an intention to educate people on their own power, their own potential, their own capacity. I'm like, why didn't we think of this before? I mean, that's why we have school, but school is, as you know, mostly gearing us to be part of a working system, to be a cog in the wheel, but to be able to address the core of our potentiality as part of how we govern a society, meaning the core of it. To me, I'm excited about that. And I feel that is the core solution to what's going on our planet, in our societies, in our countries, in our households, in our neighborhoods. So
Yeah.
I'd love you to share more about how you would, if you're in power right now, what would be the first, few things that you would do? If you were the president, what would be the first things that you would do?
Oh, first things I would do is bring in some of my favorite scientists in neuroscience and epigenetics and quantum mechanics, and start having public conversations with them, connect with the leaders in this country, connect with the leaders in other countries, really focus on peace and problem solving, working together, helping people understand that there is more than enough to go around in the country and in the world. It's a matter of changing the perspective, because I feel that some of the people that are in power today and that have been in power for a long time have been operating from a different perspective, where they feel that there isn't enough. And so they believe that they can only win if others lose. But see, I believe, and I believe there's also now science and economics that prove that we can all win if we all truly choose what is for the greater good of all. And so it's a lot of work, but I'm up for it and I enjoy it. I've noticed that one of my gifts throughout life is I magnetize very powerful and influential people. And so it's something that comes natural to me. And I've also been accused of being disarming by these people. And I take that as something that I must use for good, and that's, again, part of the reason that I'm running, is I realize that, okay, I might feel complete, but it's very selfish of me to not share my gifts with others, to not share my insights with others, because I still live in this world and I still see what's going on. And it definitely requires me more energy to have peace and to stay grounded when the people around me are confused. And so it's I don't know, some people might call them soft skills, but these are the real skills that we need right now, are people skills, being able to meet people where they are and help them bridge their own gaps from, barely surviving to infinitely thriving.
That's beautiful. It's really, really beautiful. My wife, Suzanne, she's an advocate and teacher, trainer, guide in feminine leadership. And you're like this very powerful example of feminine leadership. It's connected to the heart, has profound consciousness, great intelligence, embodied in the center of your being. I'd love you to share more about the power and the value of feminine leadership right now for our times, including
Sure.
yourself.
It's funny because I didn't think of myself that way. So it's interesting to get that perspective from you. But I can see where you're coming from, because um, it's, my platform is based on love, logic, and liberty for all. And it starts with love, because if we master love, which starts with self-love, then we're able to love others. And then we're able to role model for how others are supposed to love us and themselves. So as you say that, it's like, yeah, that makes sense, because I considered myself to be very masculine, because I'm very, I'm kind of a go-getter. Like I said, I'm a great manifester. But yes, this is all about love. And because of my own journey, that's why I realized it has to start with self-love, because many people in the world don't know how to do that. And it is a journey. And, self-love is not the same as being selfish. Many people confuse that. Self-love is eating the right foods, moving your body correctly, getting enough rest, having right, choosing right thoughts. That is self-love. It's not indulgence. And so I believe that people, and this can come in the masculine form as well, physical masculine form as well. You know, there are many loving masculine, you know, men out there as well. So it doesn't have to be a female that, you know, has this. And I mentioned my platform because logic, I believe, is a natural byproduct of love. Because if you choose to be loving, you also choose to be logical, and that's very important because right now, what I'm seeing is many people are emotional,
Mm,
and emotions cloud our judgment. You know, especially when we are in fight or flight mode, our physiology literally changes. And the more that we are emotional, the more we actually create disease in our bodies and in our minds. And so I mention logic because it's very loving to be logical. And of course, liberty, because we're meant to be free. You know, the biggest part of my journey in these past 10 years is learning to love and be comfortable as my most authentic self. Because for a while, I was conforming. I wanted others to love me, but I didn't love myself. And I share this because I believe many people are like this. It doesn't matter how old they are, it doesn't matter how famous they are, how many degrees they have, but many people still are seeking love in the world, yet they don't love themselves. And until they start to love themselves, nothing is going to change. And when they do, then they will start to be free to be their most authentic self. And then when they're the most authentic self, they're going to naturally attract more people that will love them for who they are. And I believe that is the greatest freedom, if we can live in a world where everyone is free and encouraged to be their most authentic self. If somebody is meant to be an artist, a scientist, even a garbage man. I love my, like, you know, I mean this with the most respect. My garbage man is one of the happiest people I know. Like he actually watches a lot of my interviews, and I love running into him and talking to him, and he seems like he's really doing his calling, and I'm grateful for him. And you know, I think about Martin Luther King and his speech about being the street sweeper. You know, whatever it is that you're called to do, don't feel like one position is higher or lower than the other. They are all ways for us to express love and to find fulfillment. And so I think that, you know, coming from the feminine place, that there is a lot of authenticity that is involved, as well as courage in this day and age. But in my vision down the road, there won't need to be courage to be your authentic self, because it will be the norm.
beautiful. Really being touched by what you're sharing. I wish what's lit up in you is lit up in all our leaders on the planet right now. And I'm hoping that you have an opportunity to rub off, to chat, to transmit, and to call and invite people into this depth of love, self-love. Because I believe, like you do, that all this interference, all the strife that we're having on the planet right now in our societies, it's because we don't love ourselves. And because we don't love ourselves fully, our bodies, our minds, our emotions, our histories, all of it, we have to find some way to take out that aggression. That lack of self-love gets manifested and projected on others. If we don't love ourselves, we can see enemies in everyone.
Yeah.
Having shared that, um, so in America, straight up, we talked about this earlier, there's huge division right now, huge. What do you have to say to both sides, both sides? What do you have to say to them about coming together? How can we come together? How can we heal this intense rift?
Yeah, I believe it's really important to recognize in America that we are all Americans. We're all part of the same country. We're all on the same team, and that fighting each other slows down progress. And that, you know, just because somebody doesn't have the exact same beliefs as you doesn't mean that they aren't entitled to the same freedoms as you. It's been a bit challenging for me at times because most of my friends I always thought were very loving people, and I thought they were a lot like me. In this election, I've been seeing, you know, people that I've known for a long time saying that, oh, well, because this person doesn't believe in what I do, they don't deserve the same rights as me. And it's like, whoa, hold on. You know, you have to talk, you have to come together, and don't force your beliefs on others. One of the things I learned from my father is It's none of my business what anybody else does in their square foot of space, as long as they're not bothering anybody else. And I really believe that. Let people be. Back to being authentic. How can somebody be their most authentic self if you're always trying to tell them what to do or judging them, right? And don't you want the freedom to also be your most authentic self? Yes, everybody does. So it's, part of what I'm doing is also asking people to flip the script, people that are polarized, like, hey, wait a minute. If somebody on that side said this in reverse, how would that make you feel? Oh, you don't like that. So why is it okay when somebody on this side says it? Because a lot of people are getting caught up in the emotions, right? It's very theatrical. There's a lot of drama going on, and it's so easy to get sucked in. And then, they just pick a side. It's like, hold on, step back, just look at it like a movie. Don't take sides and just flip the script. And I find that that's really helpful. To get people to recognize. But again, there are some people who are going to unfortunately hold on to their beliefs because it's painful to admit to yourself that you have been subscribed to something that isn't true and that perhaps you've been living your life this way. I think about, my life and how that applies to the bigger scale. The laws of the micro always apply to the macro, and how when I was starting to wake up and when I was hitting bottom and just like, it was shocking to my system. I mean, I ended up in the emergency room quite a few times as I was waking up, recognizing like, oh my gosh, I have been believing lies. I have not been trusting myself, because intuitively we all know the truth, right? Spirit is within us all. It's just that as human beings, we choose to not always listen to that still small voice inside, and we choose to believe something else. And so when you recognize that you've been believing a lie and not trusting yourself, it can be very painful. And so I think the challenge right now, at least for me, is, how do I do this as gently as possible, right? But also recognizing that I can't control how everybody is going to respond. All I can do is have the most integrity when I speak and share my insights and experiences, and do my best to try to relate to people where they are. And that's part of the reason I share my journey. I don't like to talk about myself. I really don't. But I feel like it helps people understand that I'm real, that I've been through a lot, and I understand what it's like to suffer. I understand what it's like to be fooled, but I also understand what it's like to make it to the other side. And I know that it can be painful, but I also know that it's worth it, and that it is the most liberating experience that anybody can experience.
Thank you. You know, one of the things that's worked for me is in chatting with people with oppositional views is supporting them into feeling and seeing and looking for what is the positive intent in their other side. So if it's let's say, for example, someone is left leaning, right? The altruistic intent might be, hey, let's all raise, I can't be happy, society can't be happy unless we're all happy, unless we all arise together, come together. The right side might be more leaning towards, hey, listen, autonomy, self-resourcefulness, you have to be strong on your own, don't be dependent on others, which also has a very powerful positive intent. And as you were sharing, those ideas are both awesome. They don't have to be opposites. They can actually be complementary, where we can take care of ourselves, have a society that strengthens our own self-determination, strengthens our own self-resourcefulness, that grows ourselves from our own power. And at the same time, from the generosity that's cultivated by our own capacity to raise up, then we can also become people that lift up the rest of society. I'd love to hear more on how you would go around, what your views are on raising the unity amongst all of us so that we all can work together even more stronger.
Yeah, well, so you just brought up a great example, and it's a conversation I've had with many friends. I'm just going to throw out, universal healthcare, because I know that's on many people's minds. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, doesn't it? But the challenge is that the way that it's being presented takes away options from people. back to my own experience. I tried the Western medicine route for many years and it didn't help me because it was only looking at symptoms of my disease and not the cause of it. And it wasn't until I started paying out of my own pocket and going to alternative healers that I got better. And so if we're talking about an option which gives people freedom, great. But what we're talking about is not that. And we're also not talking about a healthcare system that looks at the entire being. We're still talking about a system that addresses symptoms, typically with drugs or surgery. So we're not actually healing people, right? We're trying to just make it a little bit easier, but with other side effects. And so I believe, and I've had this conversation successfully with people where they're like, oh, I see, I understand. And so, and because it's like, yeah, this is a great idea, but let's work on it and make it better. And let's understand why the way the idea is being presented doesn't work. Um, I do work in criminal justice reform, like I mentioned, and some of the legislation that we have, it really punishes people that are struggling the most in their lives already, and they get treated like criminals when really these are people who are heartbroken. And so we're not addressing, again, why are these people doing things that we're punishing them for, that then they're having a difficult time reintegrating into society, instead of actually helping them feel whole so that they're not inclined to do these things, especially victimless crimes where they're the only victim, right? So it's really having a conversation and changing it and, basically broadening up the picture, like, hey, like, these are people that just need to feel loved. These are people who need to feel like they matter, like they have value in the world, especially people who do drugs. These are people who are in pain or they don't feel at all, right? So let's help them. Let's not put them behind bars. Let's not make them felons. Let's actually create a system that helps them get better so that they can be contributing to society. I believe ultimately that we all want to feel like we matter and have added value to the world. It's just that, just like I mentioned, we don't have a lot of role models teaching us how to love ourselves. We don't have a lot of role models showing us how to make a positive impact with integrity either. And so we need to lift more of those people up. Those should be our celebrities, not the ones that are really good at drama, and theatrics. We should really be, shining the spotlight on those people. And, back to initially, why am I running for president? Because that is the perfect platform to lead by example, right? If we have a president that is thoughtful, that is loving, that is truly trying to connect people from all sides, the people below, the other leaders, the people watching, they will naturally be influenced by this behavior. You don't have to tell people do this or do that. We naturally emulate behavior that we are exposed to the most.
I was thinking to myself before that you are so way ahead of your time in your philosophy and your paradigm. And then I went, while you were sharing, no, you're not. You're exactly what's needed in your way of being, what you hold it. It's actually what's needed right now more than anything. The old models are crumbling. The old systems are crumbling from the weight of their lack of integrity. They were formed in structures that were not sourced in the heart. They were sourced in all types of um, intentions for people's individual, if you will, gain and such. Many of our systems are based on individual gain, even the political system. If we look at it now, if there's one side, you have to go into battle and basically demonize all the people in your own party bit by bit until you get to the top, until you conquer that side. And when you conquer that side, you're at the top. Now you have to show that you're friends with everyone. While that's happening, the same thing's happening over here, demonizing, fighting, attacking to get to the top of this side. Then when you're at the top, then all of a sudden you have to pretend, hey, you're all my friends now. We're going to work together to now have this demonic fight with each other up here. And what you're sharing is really a way of not only sanity, but awakening. What I'm really feeling from you is what you're offering, what you're sharing is a path of awakening for our society. And I'm very grateful for that. And whatever how can I say, whatever forces that are supporting you, I think we all need to support Sorinne here with this beautiful intention. And to think that it's way out there, impossible, we actually have to make, I believe, the impossible living right here and now. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
What else is in your heart to share with us? I'd love to hear what else is in your heart to share with us.
I'm just very excited about the future and where this is going and all the doors that are opening. As I mentioned, I'm just allowing this to unfold organically, and the people that are showing up, it's extremely exciting. And, I'm also a writer. And so I've been writing a lot, and I'm inspired to be able to plant seeds everywhere, to get people to think differently. Today I wrote something to kind of get people to realize, we always reap what we sow. People who think that it's impossible for me to win, it's like, well, if you keep voting for somebody you don't actually want to win and you have to compromise your values to do that, you're probably going to get what you want, and you're probably going to have to compromise your values even more, because I want people to stop being so surprised that things are actually not getting better. We have to have the courage to choose what we want, no matter how impossible it might seem. We have to start making those choices. Nothing changes until we start to choose differently and to own our decisions and to believe they are possible. So it's exciting to be, a part of this, I don't know, a catalyst, facilitator, whatever you want to call it, because people are resonating. Obviously not everyone, but that's okay. I don't expect that. And I also know that, my position is shocking to many people, because again, you can't put me in a box. And I believe that that's really important, is that we stop trying to box people. We're all individuals. You talk about uniting people. We'll stop categorizing people. That's the easiest way to get there. People who look like me all have a different story, have different beliefs, have different preferences. And so if we just start treating everybody as an individual and getting to know them instead of generalizing them, we will get to harmony and unity much quicker. And and I'm not perfect either. And so I mentioned that this is a work in progress, I believe, for all of us, because this isn't how most of us are brought up. As a child, I experienced racism, and I was innocent, but I was in an area that was not, people didn't look like me because I was poor. And I never did anything to these other children, but their parents taught them certain things, right? So I realized that this is work for all of us. And I just share it because, again, like, that's one of the things that I've noticed throughout my life, is that people always misjudge me. And I don't take it personally, because I understand that it just comes from a place of not knowing and just passing down the same programs over and over again. But we can break the cycle. I mean, that's the gift of being human, as that we can say, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. I understand that this is not helping me or anybody else. I can choose differently today. It starts with awareness, and then will. We must will ourselves to do better, and recognize that when we do better, that we experience better as well.
Beautiful. Sorinne, how can how can our warrior sages find out about you, what you're up to, websites and such? Please direct us.
Sure. So I have a website at serene2020.com. And I will say I am the most active, though, on Facebook, because I write a lot. So I recommend checking out my Facebook pages. I have a public one and a personal one. You can follow both. I can add people on LinkedIn if anybody wants to connect with me that way. Instagram, Twitter, I'm on there as well. But I do share the most on Facebook, because it's a very easy way to publish and stuff like that. Tons of interviews on my website. I've been on panels and stuff like that, and I keep doing that. Tomorrow I'm going to be on a criminal justice reform panel moderating a conversation. So I'm always doing something and trying to share with others, because I think that it's really important to plant seeds, and I definitely would appreciate people checking me out if they want to learn more. And if you go to my website, you can also sign up for my email list where you'll automatically get a response from me. And if you have any ideas or questions for me, you can respond to that email. And I access it personally. I don't share it with anybody else.
That is fantastic. That is fantastic. Sorinne, you're an extraordinary warrior sage through and through. I really want to just honor you for your courage, your willingness to put yourself out, to stand in truth, to stand in love. I love the saying of healer in chief, which I believe is really, really needed. So thank you for being who you are. All of God's energy, all of life's energy, all of spirit's energy, all of the goddess's energy towards you, not just for now, but for years to come. I know you're going to be making a continuous big impact on this planet in many ways. And I'm looking forward to become even more aligned with you. Thanks for being the incredible warrior sage you are and being an inspiration to all of us.
Thank you, Satyen. It's been an honor to connect with you and your tribe today. I appreciate the opportunity.
Blessings. Thank you, Warrior Sage friends. Listen, go to Sorinne's websites, check it out, be part of it, get involved, be willing to enter the impossible. Be willing to be the impossible so that that depth that you anchor of, yes, this is the world we want to live in, is transmitted to bring together all the old energies and evolve them into where we stand today. All my love and blessings. Thanks.